And some round of applause, please.
Great. Thanks so much for the warm introduction. I'll be talking a bit about what we see at Aragon as sort of the future of on-chain governance. What are the next few years looking like? What are we working on? What do we think DAOs 2.0 are going to be? Because I think we've definitely moved on from the original concept, and now we're on to something new and hopefully more effective. So, the future of on-chain governance. DAOs were meant to be unstoppable. We like to call them unstoppable organizations. But to some degree, what's the point of being unstoppable if you're not being effective at reaching your goals? And this has been some of the problems that have arisen out of becoming DAOs over the last few years. There are some exceptions, of course. There's some great DAOs out there that are actually quite decentralized, they're very autonomous. I'm thinking Lido, Aave, Maker, and just like any organization, they obviously go through ups and downs themselves. But by and large, most DAOs are struggling to reach their goals. And they're sad. So why is that? So the main reason we believe this is the case, although there are many, is that the current tooling forces trade-offs. And these trade-offs are often velocity or effectiveness for decentralization. And of course, you always need to make trade-offs when you make decisions, correct? But when you're an early stage startup, for example, as most crypto projects are, if you decentralize extremely quickly, rapidly, early on when you're meant to be in a fast-moving growth stage, this can have impacts that can be negative towards this growth. So what we've had so far is very cookie-cutter governance. Basically, if you're a DAO, and I mentioned this last year actually, you're following almost one form of governance, and this is basically a referendum-style, governance setup where X token holders, token holders with X amount of tokens can put up a proposal. Every single person is supposed to vote, and then either there's a trusted multi-sig or not that executes. That's it. Every single DAO, basically every single DAO, 99% work in this methodology, right? But organizations shouldn't be run in a cookie-cutter governance style. It doesn't make sense. Organizations need to adapt and change as they change and as they adjust their goals. So what's the first thing we're going to look at here as we think of DAOs 2.0? It's context-based governance, and it requires modular technology. So sneak peek, some alpha. This is coming out in March. DAOs fully on-chain on Aragon are now going to be able to govern their protocols, their assets, etc. in a context-based way. What does this mean? This means instead of every single proposal that goes up requires a referendum-style vote, we can now start to granularly create different types of proposals. As you can see here are different proposal types. There's minting for your token as one proposal type. There's protocol upgrades as another proposal type, and there's grants as another proposal type, right? And so now we have different types of proposals, and they can have different forms of governance and what we call stages, right? And here you can see that to upgrade the protocol, for example, you have 3 stages. And it can be optimistic. It can start with, okay, let's have only the security council or the core team who know the protocol to be able to put up a proposal, so it's permission. But then in stage 2, we'll give token holders the ability to veto, hard power to veto this change in case they think it's malicious, right? And then it will go into a time lock if people want to exit, if they disagree, if it's still passed. So what does this give us now? This gives us fully on-chain governance. Token holders have hard power, but you're allowing the team to work optimistically, more effectively, and faster at an early stage in their existence as a DAO, right? And the great thing is not everybody has to vote on this, and that's okay, right? This is going to be experts who actually understand the code base and the protocol upgrade are the ones who can put up this proposal, but token holders have hard power. And that's going to be a different proposal flow, if you want, than a grants proposal, where you might have some people with a lot of business acumen who are participating, those who have experience handing out grants and in grants programs, right? That could be all token holders. So now we start to get more granular. Like organizations can be run fully on-chain with checks and balances in the way they should, in context-based way. And here's the members, right? So you have your supermajority multisig as one member, you have your core team, you have token holders, grants committees, legal guardians, whatever you want. And they can be plugged and played wherever you want into the different proposals that you create. So you have an actual organization that can run like an actual organization and adapt over time. You can easily upgrade by swapping plugins. You can easily upgrade your governance methodology and make changes. So now we have future-proof governance, right? We can start to actually work as a great organization. So that's the first one. Sorry, we have 15 minutes, right? And I got 3 things to tell you about the future of DAOs. So the first one was, yes, context-based governance, modular governance, giving power to experts in a context-based way. Now we have automation. Automation and AI. This is the hot topic, AI topic right now. There's a lot of funds that are going into it. And these are really important. Vitalik, I think it was back in like 2014, said automation, especially for DAOs, was meant to be at the center, and humans were meant to be at the edges. And I'll explain why this is so important in a minute. But first, let's take a look at some AI agents that are working within DAOs today. Obviously, we have Clanker, which is super interesting. And the Clanker bot has its own token. And it basically enables token launches where you can just, as a human, go in and input what you want out of that token. It will launch a token for you. It'll take a fee. And then that fee goes into its own token. And it's all AI and automated. So now we're getting into like a really fast way of launching tokens. And actually, it has its own flywheel because it's generating revenue off of that, which is cool. Botto, for example, creates like 20 to 30,000 images per week for NFT auctions. People vote on those NFT auctions, and the money gets resent to all these artists that have inputted their art to allow for Botto to create more art. At Aragon, actually, there's some interesting happening. We have a voting plugin agent, right? So this actually allows for the AI agent to actually optimize on our VE locker where rewards are sent to. So you don't, as a human, have to go in every week, re-vote for something to try and receive your maximum rewards back. Well, this AI agent does it for you. And then, of course, something that's really important to us is actually starting to automate the distribution of emissions themselves and rewards, which is super important. This is how projects start to get their flywheel going, which I'll talk about in a minute. They often give out these emissions and these rewards. But right now it's done manually. Somebody has to calculate how much to give out. They have to put it up to a full referendum vote in the DAO for 2 weeks before it gets sent out. And by that point, you're definitely not optimizing how much value you want to give out to incentivize people to use your protocol. So you're missing out there. So there's lots of work going into AI and automation right now. But why is this important? So automation allows us to continue to be decentralized while still being effective. And that's what's super powerful about it, right? If we don't have to have humans touching everything in the DAO, it means we can still have tons of humans with power over the DAO, but they have less to do, which means there's less bureaucracy, and we can move quite a bit faster. So we can still have our decentralization. We can still have, for example, a token distributed amongst millions of people, but we can still be effective. And that's something that automation and potentially AI brings into the fold here, which is super, super important. So AI will not in the short to medium term replace our long-term strategic thinking and decision-making. I don't think that that's the case. I mean, I guess we could argue about that, but I think really the DAO and humans within the DAO will set that long-term vision, set that long-term trajectory. They probably will do a better job than that, and AI can come in narrow decision-making points and be able to execute on that in a more effective way and more quickly without having the bureaucracy of humans having to touch everything. And this, I think, is what it's going to allow our DAOs to be more autonomous in what they do, obviously be more decentralized in that they can have token holders, but still be effective. I really do believe that AI should support DAOs, but DAOs should govern AI in the future, which is really interesting. And I mean, Elon Musk has talked not specifically about DAOs, but about like how do we safely manage AI in the future. And DAOs are just a brilliant example of a way that humans can actually work together to make sure that AI is controlled to some degree. And so that's our belief. So finally, the third thing. So we have the first was context-based modular governance. Let's get more granular, right? Let's have projects actually working like regular organizations, but with the proper checks and balances. We obviously talked about AI and automation very briefly, where obviously we can be really decentralized, autonomous, but still be effective. And finally, let's get to something that's really important, which is tokenomic-driven governance. So to date, there's been like a real disconnect, and it's primarily due to regulatory reasons, but most governance tokens lack not just on-chain power over protocols or capital flows, but also there's a segregation between value accrual to the token and the protocol itself. But we have set up a system where tokens and governance are intrinsically linked, right? Distribution and liquidity impact governance dynamics and security, and governance decisions determine value accrual. But when these are misaligned, we start to get problems. So an example, if you have your DAO and it is secured via governance by tokens, but your token is not accruing any value, what is the purpose of people wanting to own that token? Some might say, okay, they want to defend the protocol, but that hasn't really shown to be the case. The problem is they don't want to own that token. So what happens? They start to sell it. They start to try and buy other tokens where there is value accrual, and they hunt for that value accrual. And so what you get is you start to have not only less token holders, but less participation in governance. And this is where security risks open up. So here, and these are actually some of the biggest DAOs in our industry, funny enough. But here we have obviously Lido DAO, which I'm a delegate in, struggling to reach quorum. And Hasu recently just posted, funny enough, started to hint at value accruing to the token being pretty important. Why? Because what is the point of owning LDO right now, right? There is no value accruing to it, and so people don't want it. And so now they're struggling to reach quorum because they don't have voters to vote, right? The same goes for ENS. Brantley, I think he's one of the co-founders of ENS, just put out a huge blast yesterday saying, delegation is only going down. Please delegate to me. Well, ENS actually generates a pretty substantial revenue, but it's not really accruing back to the token. So why are people holding the token? They're not. They're selling the token. And then finally, this is the Arbitrum, I believe, percentage of ARB token that's actually delegated to vote. And this continues to decrease as well, and it's for the same reason. So actually, if we're going to have tokens actually govern something, then we have to make those tokens valuable enough for people to own, to participate. And it's not just working to have on-chain power, which most don't, over the protocol. Value needs to accrue in the token. We couldn't talk too much about this before. Regulatory reasons are why Uniswap, for example, didn't put forward their proposal. It just sort of all of a sudden sort of died. But these conversations are starting to open up now with a slightly, we think, better regulatory environment. So tokenomic mechanisms can help reward loyalty and participation. I was just speaking to Brett from Cherry, and we were talking about sort of offense for defense versus defense, which is pretty interesting. DAOs, for the most part, have been focused around defense, right? They've been about securing the protocol, securing these assets. Well, if you're a project that needs to grow, which most do, 99% are newer projects that need to grow, well, then you need to be on the offense. And that means we need to start embedding tokens and tokenomics to create this offense. And that's what we've started to do at Aragon. So token lockers, for example, that have power over financial flows, this turns governance into a productive asset. It improves value accrual, and it introduces liquidity sinks, which can help price. Number two, right? I was talking about this earlier as well, balancing the carrot versus the stick approach, right? Back in the day, Curve has this really cool model where you lock your token. It has a 4-year sort of lock with a decreasing power curve. But if you exit, it's a stick approach. What we're trying to do is incentivize people to use your protocol with carrots. And this improves loyalty. It decreases principal agent problems as well. Of the current existing delegate model, where there's no skin in the game, the people really owning the protocol and governance actually may not even own any tokens. And then finally, rewarding participation and contributions to network offsets, financial and human capital costs for those actually involved. So we need to start using our tokens as offense rather than just defense. And there are some great examples. So we worked with Mode, which is a roll-up on the OP stack, on the super chain. And this is what happened after they deployed a VE model with gauges. So meaning you had to lock your token in order to participate. If you participated, you received rewards for participating, okay? So after 6 weeks, roughly 43% of the circulating supply staked. 7,000 plus unique voters participated. and over 31,000 votes were cast into these gauges. And what they were doing is they were directing incentives, so emissions, and our rewards to the apps that were building on top of Mode. Guess what happened then? All those projects started incentivizing people to vote for them. They started launching tokens on that, and you begin to create this flywheel. And so what happens? Obviously, now you have decreasing circulating supply and token sink. You actually get rewarded for owning the token and participating. And so the price jumped up from, I have the little thing there, just after September and October, I think it was 11 cents. And it went up to 60 cents basically, or 0.06 cents, sorry, and then back down a little bit, but you're talking about like, a 6x increase here. So that's them using the token offensively versus purely defensively. And we're starting to see that across the space now. We launched with Mode, Puffer came after that. We have 3 more protocols that launched with us, Kim, Tenderize, Yield Nest, and this is really starting to pick up now. Projects are all vying for a set amount of liquidity, a set amount of participants, and our industry is pretty small. So it's a battle to be offensive. And so they're starting to use their tokens once again in this manner, which is really, really interesting. Yeah, so the ability for DAOs to reach their goals and adapt over time is what will make them effective. But the most unstoppable DAO is going to actually be the most effective DAO. And so I think we've done a great job of creating DAO tooling on the blockchain that allows them to be unstoppable. You can have referendum-style votes. That's great. But they're struggling to be effective, and that's our next step, DAOs 2.0. It's let's make these organizations more effective than the organizations or the traditional organizations that we see off-chain. Let's use these things like tokens as superpowers. Let's give them modular tooling where they can customize how they interact and what they use. And let's use automation to ensure that humans are more at the edges rather than at the center, so that not only can we stay decentralized and autonomous, but actually still be really effective at the same time. So those are the 3 things that we'll be focusing on at Aragon in the next couple of years. Already seeing great feedback, and as you see some stats from DAOs going on the offense with tokenomics. Automation is going to help them take that to the next level. And modular governance it just makes sense, right? Like, how else do you run organizations? You don't have a referendum on every single decision you want to make, but that doesn't mean we have to give up being decentralized and autonomous to do that. So that was really quick because I only have a minute left. But yeah, here's my Twitter. Feel free to message me if you're interested in DAOs, if you are thinking of launching one yourself, if you're thinking of launching a token, whatever, we're here to help. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. We have time for a few questions, and I would expect there are a few, so please go ahead.
Go ahead.
So on the contextual-based voting...
Just a second,
Yeah.
The mic is coming,
Perfect.
coming.
Thank you. On the contextual-based voting,
Yeah.
who decides in which of the contexts a proposal goes to?
So-
Because you're incentivized to pick like the most favorable one to pass, right? The easiest one.
So say it again. So you're saying when you make your proposal,
Yeah.
So this is how it works. Only the people granted permissions to create a proposal under that proposal type can do that. So if the proposal type is a referendum-style proposal type, let's say it's a grants, and token holders, the requirement in stage 1 is that token holders with X tokens can put up their proposal. They can only do it in that proposal flow. They can't go put up a protocol proposal because they don't have the permission to do that on the blockchain. So in the other sense, if you set it up that, okay, for a protocol upgrade, only the Security Council can, then only those members, probably on multi-sigs, would be able to do that. So it's how the permissions are set. These permissions are set when you launch the DAO through an admin function, and then you remove the admin function when you launch your DAO, and then the root power will stay with the token holders to make decisions in the future. You can separate the power if you want. There are ways to ensure the admin stays if you really want to, although now, is that a DAO? Who knows? But you get my point. You have that flexibility.
I'm wondering like what prevents someone from launching a proposal on the... So let's say that someone has access to the protocol upgrades is like very strong, so like to the grants one.
Okay.
Right? What prevents them from actually like masking a proposal upgrade into the grant flow?
They won't be able to do that because when they put forward the payload, so they have to put a payload up on the proposal. So the payload that they'll put up on the proposal in that proposal type has to be money. It's the only thing that will allow them
Got
to
it.
connect is to move money. It won't let them put up a proposal with a payload to upgrade the protocol.
Okay.
It just, like, the permission won't be there.
Yeah, okay. So the way that grants work is codified. Okay.
Exactly,
Understood.
exactly.
Got it.
Yes, it's not just a UI feature. This is why this is super powerful. Like, this is not just UI featured. This is on the back end. This is in the protocol through what we call a permission management system, which allows people, wallets, token holders, digital identification. It's agnostic, actually, to the input. It's a permission management system. So exactly, it's not on the UI. Great question, really great question.
Well, we have one more question. Yes, Sabrina, please. University of Lucerne. So now I'm curious to hear.
We're curious.
Okay.
Nice catch.
Hello.
Hi.
I would like to know, I'm curious, what do you think about polycentric approach within DAOs?
Yeah, I think it's certainly an option. Look, I think any approach to managing any organization is based on what you're trying to achieve, what goal you're trying to achieve. I think the problem is that we keep basketing all the decisions in one DAO to follow one methodology when there really should be several methodologies within one DAO to make decisions, for the most part. And likewise, depending on what your DAO is trying to achieve, it should have a different decision-making process. An example, Lido is one of my favorite examples because they're huge. Like, there's $40 billion that's governed on Aragon via Lido. So we can't afford for anything to go wrong. We can't afford for there to be censorship resistant. We can't afford for there to be, regulatory problems or somebody trying to take it over. So that's why they have to have a slower sort of more referendum style based governance, because, well, there's so much at stake that they have to play more defensively. It's funny because they did put up a proposal a couple months ago to start trying to be more offensive, but they're going to have to always be careful because there's just too much literally at stake, right? So I think it just depends on your goal as an organization. I think any form of governance can be viable depending on what you're trying to achieve. You just have to tailor it. And I think the most important thing, which until now you couldn't do, is you have to be able to adjust your governance as you go. No organization is going to start with one form of governance and govern the exact same way for its entirety, whether, if the organization lives to be 100 years old. And in the tooling, you could not have done that until basically last year when we launched OSX, our new protocol. Yeah. Thanks. Great question, though.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I think we could listen to you all afternoon, but I'm afraid we are out of time. But again, a round of applause. That was a really great presentation and wonderful question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.